Welcome back to the news today. This is One-on-One. Yesterday, the Indian Supreme Court made an historic judgment granting constitutional recognition to transgender people as a third gender, also giving them the right to have family. As we know, being part of the third gender consists of many challenges in terms of acceptance in the society. Nora Grinberg, my guest tonight, a gender counsel and gender rights advocate, is here in the studio today to tell us more about the status of gender equality and progressiveness in Israel. Good evening. Thank you very much for coming.
Good evening. Hello.
You know, just to see the Indian Supreme Court decision, it's a little bit strange because isn't it confusing more to transgenders who already are passing so much to give them like another definition, just a third definition?
Well, yeah, but one has to consider that, first of all, the report are somehow misleading because of the use of the word transgender. And we need to understand that the word transgender in this context, in the Indian context, does not mean exactly what we understand in the Western world. Okay, so, and we also need to understand two more things, and that is that the Indian cultural tradition is steeped in the idea of gender fluidity, okay, which is very different from the Western tradition where we have, at least for the last 300 years, a very binary, a very dichotomous vision of gender. There are men and there are women, and that's all there is to it. That's not so in India. Okay, in India you have entire groups of third genders already. The most well-known of them are the Hijra, okay, who are people who are born in male bodies and who decide to live their lives as women, and some of them also get castrated. Okay, so this is one thing. The cultural context is very different. The second thing is that the Indian society, as is well known, is organized in castes.
Yes, definitely.
Okay, in castes, in groups, etc. So when the news say transgender, they don't mean transgender the way we understand it here. For instance, there are no transgender men. I mean, those who were born in female bodies. What they mean especially is groups like the Hijras, okay, who count several 100,000 people in India. Okay, and now the Supreme Court decision has decided to recognize them because they really don't live either as men or women. And in India, in the Indian context, this is perfectly acceptable. Okay, and the importance, the significance of this decision in India is that these people, these transgenders, as they call them, have been declared to be an OBC, an other backward class, which gives them certain rights within the Indian constitution. Okay, they are now eligible for certain help from the government, like preference in certain jobs. And this is very different from what happens in the West, in Israel.
So let's look at what is happening in the West, and let's specifically look at what is happening here in Israel, because the society cannot totally yet accept transgenders here in Israel. Even sometimes we know that in some parts of Israel, Tel Aviv is very open. This is, we know, and very gay-friendly and very lesbian-friendly and very transgender-friendly. But in a lot of parts in Israel, it's not. It's not accepted. People cannot get the concept. Nevertheless, maybe when we're talking about transgenders.
Yeah, but that may be so. That may be so. Although I tend not to use abstract terms such as society. There are different societies in Israel.
Of course.
But the problem of transgender people, of most transgender people in Israel, is not that there are not enough gender categories. The problem is that within the gender categories existing currently, men and women, it's for some people it's difficult to envision the idea of gender fluidity, of gender transition, and some of the transgender people in Israel and elsewhere don't really identify as either men or women, or sometimes men, sometimes women, okay? But for most transgender people, their gender identification is very clear. It's only different from that assigned to them when they were born.
Yes.
Okay, and yes, for some sectors in the population, it's hard to accommodate this difference. Okay.
You come from a personal background to this story. You
Yes.
You passed all the difficulties. You saw it. What is the most?
Well, I deal with it every day. Apart from that, in my work, okay, I treat transgender people and families of transgender people.
What is the most difficult thing that was personally for you?
Well, my personal experience, I don't know if it's very pertinent because I started transition when I was already over 40, and I was well equipped for it. I mean, my experience is not typical of that of most transgender people, but I treat mostly young people, teenagers, even children, or people in their 20s. And that's a completely different story because they face much more difficult situations. Okay, rejection and dehumanization and all sorts of violence, be it physical violence or verbal violence, discrimination, etc. And apart from that, some of them earn the respect of society as it should be. Okay.
And do you feel that you earn the respect of society?
Well, I have no problem. Yes, I run my life. I have my family, and so one must say that most transgender people undergo the transition, and afterwards they just live their lives. I mean, some of us, transgender people are always different, okay, in a sense. But for most of them, they go through transition, and then afterwards they live their lives and encounter this or that difficulties, okay? The worst times are for those who are in between, okay? These people have it very, very hard.
Because when you're saying different, they feel different, or they are different in the society. When I sit and when you got into the studio, I saw a complete woman. I didn't see anything.
I am a complete woman.
I didn't see something different. I didn't see anything different.
No, it's not. In my case, as in the case of most transgender people I know, the only difference is in my history, my personal history. I was born in a male body. Okay, so I was not supposed to be a woman, at least according to society's beliefs. Okay, so this is it. But in most situations, most day-to-day situations, that's not relevant. Okay, and that's so for most transgender people. I can assure you, if you live in a big city, that every day you go past several transgender people and you really don't notice them. But as I said, for those in between, for those who suffer from rejection, for those who are disempowered, who lack education or support or economic power, things are a lot more difficult. Okay.
You know, one of the maybe most biggest questions that women has is, I wonder what men are thinking. And maybe one of the biggest questions that men has on women is, what do they have in their minds?
Well,
do you feel like you have both?
No, really no. I mean, I very much doubt whether
because
all women.
I will envy you like until the day that I will
yes,
die.
And if I met someone who knew those things, I would envy them too. The truth is, I very much doubt that all women or all men think alike. Okay, we are used to grouping them into putting them into groups, but the truth is, men and women are very different.
Nora Grinberg, thank you very much for coming to our studio.
Thank you for having me.
It was a great pleasure. Thank you, our viewers, for being with us tonight. Tomorrow we will be here again. Good night.